Hello and welcome back. I want to apologize for the break in work, but unfortunately I was hospitalized for a good portion of June and I was put on heavy rest until early July. But thankfully I'm recovering to a point of being able to function normally again, so here I am, and I am so glad to be back. In my downtime, I decided I wanted to add an element to my channel by summarizing the actual FBI files of the various criminal figures that I enjoy breaking down. So, the first one I wanted to do was none other than one of the most notorious FBI informants in history, Gregory the Grim Reaper Scarpa. I'll be breaking his files down into multiple videos because there are a couple hundred pages of files so far that I've found. However, there are redactions, so please bear with me as some of the info wasn't as clear-cut as I was hoping it would be. Also, I will leave a link to the files in the description. Now, let's begin. On March 7th of 1960, Greg Scarpa was arrested for his involvement in the theft of an interstate case by the Bureau. After his bond and release, the feds contacted him hoping to get information about his brother who was now a fugitive from the law, but Greg denied their request. Later on in 1961, when the Profaci and Gallo War started, the feds tried 3 more times to get information from Greg. He denied their requests again and again and finally asked them that they stop asking him for information. They agreed, but they gave him a point of contact in case he changed his mind. Well, Greg did change his mind on October 7th of 1961 because Scarpa decided to reach out to the feds. By November 11th of 1961, Gregory Scarpa had been accepted into the top echelon criminal informant program with the feds. His nickname or symbol, as they call it, has been redacted in the file, so unfortunately I can't share it with you because I don't know what it is. His occupation in the files were as labeled: a gambler and numbers writer. His past activities were labeled as selling stolen merchandise and operating a nightclub as his front for gambling and numbers running. His labeled associates were Carmine Persico Jr., Charles Lo Cicero, Salvatore Scarpa, and Sal Albanese, as well as an acquaintance to the gambling operations in South Brooklyn. Some of the first information he gave was about a load of stolen cigarettes from Newark, New Jersey, being offered to him, as well as a load of cigarettes in Brooklyn that had been stolen out of Florida and brought up north in late 1961. Because of the information, both loads of cigarettes were recovered. Soon he began discussing the killing of Joe Manisco, which he immediately implied he had no part of. He describes it as an attempt that was actually made for Joey Gallo. He says that a group of hitters who had their guns exposed already thought they were approaching Joe Gallo but instead came across Joe Manisco. He ultimately insinuated that it was Harry Fontana, but that he didn't believe any of Fontana's relatives had the nerves to be involved in the shootings with Harry. He also said that the Profaci family was too powerful and that the war had gone too far for there to ever be any sort of peace or reconciliation between the Gallos or the Profacis. Greg then began talking about how the Gallo brothers were originally brought around by Johnny Scamini, even though Charles Lo Cicero didn't like nor trust the Gallos. The Gallos' operations were profitable, so they were ultimately made, which led to them running wild on their own accord. He stated that the Gallos began to become frustrated over their fact that they weren't getting rich because they couldn't encroach on other families' turf and their operations, basically. That infuriated the Gallo brothers, which is what ultimately led to the chaotic war between the Profacis and the Gallos. It wasn't just one instance or another. There were several sit-downs between said parties at the Idlewild Airport's Golden Door restaurant. Greg insinuated he went to a couple of those meetings but refused to go to any more due to Joe Gallo and his ridiculous and volatile tendencies. When the split finally happened, Persico originally sided with the Gallo brothers and even tried recruiting Greg to follow with him. But Greg said the Gallo brothers were nothing but ticking time bombs and he refused the offer. He also stated that most of the men that went with the Gallo brothers wound up dead. Scarpa then went on to say that by December 9th of 1961 that an order came down from the top to stop assassinating the Gallo associates, which Greg didn't question. He was in no position to. Charles Lo Cicero went and tried to offer a peace treaty to the Gallos, but the Gallos refused. After the refusal of peace by Larry Gallo, orders for assassination from the Profacis were put back on the table. Scarpa later spoke of a 2-week period of peace between the two to negotiate a possible treaty again. He stated that Larry Gallo went to the home of Charles Lo Cicero on March 18th of 1962 to tell him that there would be no peace again starting the following day. Scarpa then said that 2 days later the peace moratorium was actually still in place and that they had until April 2nd to broker a peace which ultimately involved Joseph Profaci stepping down as the boss. By April 4th, it was clear that Joe Profaci would not be stepping down, and along with that, there was a reveal of 3 different points made to the Gallo brothers. Number 1, the Gallos could stay on their own and be in peace. 2, they could rejoin the Profaci family. And 3, if the Gallos committed any more violence, both them and their families would be targeted. From there, Greg began describing the existence of the Mafia's commission and how it worked. He further explained how it made decisions and how it figured out replacements. He also disclosed how the 5 main family commission members became unhappy with a commission member from Florida and made him disappear. He also soon explained that prior to Appalachian, the commission would actually get together and have large meetings to discuss operations. It wasn't until Appalachian that the commission decided to stop having larger meetups. On April 17, 1962, Scarpa began describing how the family that Charles Luciano once ran was now the Gambino family. He states that it became the Gambino family after Albert Anastasia died, which is when Gambino himself took over the family. He also went on to implicate Gambino member Peter Ferreira as the largest numbers operator in the state. Greg Scarpa then went back to disclosing information about his own family again and describing how Joe Magliocco was the number 2 man in charge and that Joe Magliocco's brothers were directly under their brother. Because of the information so far delivered by Greg Scarpa, it was decided he would be approved to continue in the criminal informant program. Thanks for watching part 1. Part 2's on the way. As always, have a wonderful rest of your day and don't forget to put a hit on the like button.